Hello, YouTube, and welcome to the very final day of Vanessa Júpiter Reads Frankenstein. The live stream that I decided to title simply Frankenstein Full Novel Discussion. It's apparent that everyone's know I'm not particularly creative with the title of these things. So, in case you have no idea where you are or what is happening, I am Vanessa Júpiter. I have this channel titled Vanessa Júpiter Sitting Room, and for the last, I believe 14 weeks, actually 15 because I skipped one, I have been reading Frankenstein on Sundays. No, I skipped 2, so it's been 16 weeks, which means 4 months. For the last 4 months I have been reading Frankenstein the novel right here on this channel on YouTube in a project titled Vanessa Júpiter Reads, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's a project where I read books that I consider to be good, relevant, or both. And did I say books? I meant texts. Vanessa Júpiter Reads is a live stream series where I read texts that I consider to be good, relevant, or both. For Frankenstein, I very much leaned very heavily into the good part of that sentence. I don't necessarily think that we are in a moment where Frankenstein is more relevant than it usually is. I think it's a relatively relevant text for some reasons, like generally, but I don't think that like now is a time when we are experiencing a particular need for Frankenstein, as is the case with, for example, Our Prison's Obsolete, which was one of my previous projects of Vanessa Júpiter Reads. So originally I was going to title this Frankenstein Ramble, and this is exactly why. It's because I knew that I was going to be rambling a lot. The idea of this current stream that you are now watching is that I am going to share what we all learned together during the last 4 months while reading Frankenstein, and go part by part. Like every week I read 2 chapters. The first week, the first week was the letters that Walton sends to his sister Margaret. And so I read all of the letters in the first week, and then in every single subsequent week I read 2 chapters each time. And let's start by talking a little bit about the structure of Frankenstein. I see that a viewer has showed up. Jojo, are you here? And yeah, like, what is he saying? Yeah, let's first talk a little bit about the structure of the story. This is something that I am very passionate about, and that I would only talk about for reals in the 8th part of the live stream, because chapter 12 is the moment where we get the narration within the narration within the narration within the narration, and this is very symmetrical. You may see by the length of my live streams and like by what I wore in my live streams that it is really a symmetrical novel. Like I decided to do this cute thing of wearing a different wig and makeup style for Victor than I did for the monster, and then I did for Walton. This is my Walton look, and if you just look at the thumbnails of my videos, you will notice that it is very, very symmetrical. This is one of the things that I find very interesting, especially in the context of this narrative that a lot of people seem to have, that Mary Shelley just wrote this book, that Mary Shelley just had this idea and just put it to paper and boom. When you pay attention to the story, it's very obviously not true. Like, it's a story that she worked heavily on. Like, a story does not come out this way without like a lot of work. Like, there's no way to write a novel like this without like outlining and like putting in a lot of effort. So this narrative that like this was just like, you know, this woman who had this idea and had to write everything, and like not this, you know, intellectual basically, who put all of the effort into the creation of this, literally this new literary genre. Like, science fiction as we know today would not exist without Frankenstein. So Jojo, I asked specifically if you were here because the idea of this live stream is for it to be a bit rambly and for me to just like stream of conscience. So I want to like dialogue a bit more than I usually do. So please make all the comments that you want all the time. Like, the more I talk to someone, the better. Like, honestly, ideally, I should have considered like inviting you to like do a live stream together maybe, but it's fine. Like we're still figuring out how this YouTube channel thing is working. And maybe you would have refused, but in any case, like, the having a dialogue is something that I do really want to do for this one. Also, this has been Vanessa Júpiter Reads. It has been like, the thing is that you've been here since the beginning. Like, you have been the only person who like followed it from beginning to end. So I would have appreciated to have like someone to talk to. Anyway, with that having been said, let's go in the week by week. And as I have just alluded to, I am going to be pausing at any point that I want to read comments and stuff like that. I am happy to comment because I have thoughts, and also Victor is the worst. Yes, Victor is the worst. We have just like, in case you don't know, like the schedule, like in case you're watching this in the future and it's not very clear what the schedule of like the live stream was, we have literally just finished reading Frankenstein, like right now, like 5 minutes ago. But I'd like him more if he had a boyfriend. So, with that as the comment, let's talk about about my notes. Yes, I have a clipboard of notes because I am analog. I am like, I know I've been reading on an e-reader since the beginning, but I am analog when it comes to taking notes. So, part 1 was when we read the letters from Walton to Margaret. And in those letters was when we, as in Vanessa Júpiter Reads, the live stream, we started shipping Victor and Walton to no end. And I have made, like, I wrote some jokes that I made because I was really happy with some jokes that I made. And the joke that I'm really happy about in the first live stream is, my legacy is to be reading Frankenstein to people and having them ship Walton and the stranger. And this is true. I love that, like, we all were shipping Walton and Victor. We basically thought that Victor was cute with every single man that he was together. And we're going to get to our what's the name of like main ship? Like, whenever like someone ships someone more than, like, ships a certain couple more than we ship like literally anybody else, like that has a name, right? I'm like, I wasn't on Tumblr enough to know this, but I know that this has a name, and we are going to get to our main ship because we have one. But for now, we are shipping Walton and Victor, and we have gay vibes between Walton and Victor. And the first live stream was very much lighthearted and fun, and there was a lot of drama, because there's always a lot of drama. Like if you've seen any of my live streams, and if you read Frankenstein, you know that Frankenstein is pure drama. So like we started off strong with like a lot of drama. We ship them because Victor is a man magnet and he's cute with all of them. He is. OTP! Yes! One true pair. OTP. Yes, we're going to get to our OTP soon enough, but for now we are shipping Victor and Walton. And then we went to part 2, where oh yeah. Okay. First of all, chapter 1 finishes with Victor like getting to know Elizabeth Lavenza, who he's going to subsequently marry by the ending of the book, like right before her demise by the monster, right? And the final sentence of chapter 1 is she is mine, or something like that. Like, he 100% associates being like loving Elizabeth to possessing her. Around this time, I was also like working on my video about Blind Manor, The Haunting of Blind Manor. So I had it very much in mind, and I commented in one of the videos that that in Blind Manor there is this one sentence of like, people confuse possession with love, but they are opposites, really. I think that it's Jamie who says that. And yeah, so that was a thing that was happening at the time as well. And I would like to say that there is the question of how much are we supposed to dislike Victor, because obviously around here in Vanessa Júpiter Reads, we all despise Victor. We all despise Victor. This is obvious. And most people nowadays despise Victor, I think. But I think that there is often the idea that maybe we are not meant to hate him as much as we do. But the ending of chapter 1 being something like what it is, to me, clearly indicates that he's supposed to be disliked. The fact that, like, we just read the ending of the book, and the fact that the final word comes from the monster, and the monster like has a three long page monologue about his feelings. Like, I think that we are very clearly supposed to side with the monster. And I think that the seeds of dislike towards Victor are planted right here in the very first chapter, when we see him claiming to possess Elizabeth, saying that she would be his forever or something. We have also still in chapter 1, the way that Elizabeth is described is extremely racist, and I believe that we all agree that it seemed to be quite unintended. I don't think that Mary Shelley was trying to make a commentary on racism at all. And yeah, like it's the thing of like Elizabeth like has the bluest blue eyes, and and like blonde hair, and like next to the other children, she like stood out, and because of this, the Frankensteins, the family of Victor, decided to adopt her because she was so perfect and so, yeah, so white. And I don't think that that is problematized, and that's exactly what I mean by like the possessiveness of Victor coming across as very deliberate. Like, that comes across as very deliberate. There are many things in Frankenstein that come across as extremely deliberate to me, as it's deliberate commentary on masculinity and on relationships, for example. But the racism doesn't. Victor is absolutely the villain of the story and falls short of being sympathetic because he's so selfish and self-centered. He is. He truly is, and we're going to get there. Oh, yes, there is a running theme. There is a running theme in the live streams, which is me with my Elizabeth persecution complex. Like in the second part of the live stream, while just reading chapters 1 and 2, I started talking about how much people dislike Elizabeth and how I think that she's done dirty and how I think that she deserves better by pop media and by pop and by criticism in general of the book. And I, like, from the beginning to the end of the book, I never shut up about the fact that I think that Elizabeth deserves better. And I didn't even notice that I was overdoing it so much, but like watching the streams back, it's so apparent to me that like I just never stopped. So there you go. Like, the beginning of the Elizabeth persecution complex starts right at part 2 of the live stream. Then we jump into part 3, where I read chapters 3 and 4. Obviously, part 3 was when I read chapters 3 and 4. Okay, so here we get the pregnancy metaphor. I have this reading of Frankenstein of Victor actually being very envious of a womb because he wants to create life, but never once does he realize that humans need to create life, otherwise the human species would have been extinct. And this isn't something that really ever crosses Victor's mind. And just like a few other things that we were talking about, I don't think that this is an oversight by Mary Shelley. I think that this is an oversight by Victor the character. I think that Mary Shelley is fully aware that humans need to create life to continue existing, and that this oversight is a way for Victor to be envious of the womb. Maybe not this far is like Mary Shelley intention, but this is my reading of it. We should get Elizabeth a girlfriend. Yes, seconded. And how I think the metaphor for pregnancy is like, I think it's obvious, and the monster being his offspring is clear, I think. Also, we one of the reasons why we ship the men so much is because they are so affectionate to each other. They truly are. Victor is proof that just because people can have children, not everyone should have children. Absolutely, Victor should not have. Like, Victor mistreated the monster and like was not apologetic about it at all, not remorseful at all. Like, reading the final chapter, the final letters of Frankenstein, and Victor saying that he doesn't know where he doesn't think that he did anything wrong. Like, Victor, honey, like, did you read your own story? But I was saying that in Frankenstein, men show a lot of affection towards each other, a lot more affection than what we are used to seeing men showing to each other in current society. And I theorized during part 3 of the live stream that this came not from necessarily Mary Shelley intending Victor to be with men romantically or sexually, but rather because those were uh, the forms that was the habitual mode of relationship between men at the time, at the 19th century. And I think that it's likely, honestly, gender is made up. Gender like, we all know gender is made up, right? Like, you like listen, like, I don't know who this video is going to reach, but if you're watching like a non-binary drag queen reading Frankenstein and talking about it, and you don't agree that gender is made up, then like go to gender theory classes before you come to me again. But with that, gender is super made up, right? In the 19th century, I 100% believe that it's likely that gender roles and masculinity was extremely different, and that men could be more openly affectionate to each other without implications of homosexuality. With that, we still ship them because we're reading it through a modern lens, and because representation, because I think that there's room there. Like, Walton was single, Clerval was single. I think that Victor was like, just, Victor was into those dudes, and like, he really was. I think so. I believe. I want to believe. My point. I've lost my point completely. And then we come to part 4, which is when Victor gets terribly sick within the narrative. So I did my sickness aesthetic. I was sitting in my bed and I had like a bunch of like tissues all around me. Just actually my favorite setup. It's just so messy, and I am here for that. So in this house, we know for a fact that gender is a social construct. Of course. Here in Vanessa Júpiter's sitting room, we know that gender is a social construct. We better, at least. So yeah, it was the sickness aesthetic. There's a lot of shaky camera. Like, if that bothers you, like, I am sorry for part 4 of the live stream. And here we reach yet another moment that I'm not sure how intentional it was on the part of Mary Shelley, which is classism, because we have introduced the character of Justine, who could be... No, I'm not going to say that she could be Elizabeth's girlfriend. Like, no. So we introduce the character of Justine, who is the person who works at the house of the Frankensteins. And the way that it's discussed, it's always like, Justine was like a sister to us. Justine was like part of the family to us, blah, 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 blah. But she isn't really. Like, she's still working at their house. And this is like this way of presenting class that is very patronizing, very patriarchal in a way also, like, where just adopting people into your house and calling them your family while still seeing them as lesser than, that's just classic way of classism. And like, coming from Brazil, like in Brazil it's so common for people who work for upper classes to pretty much live with them, and it's like, it's it's complicated to say that, like, to just make a blanket statement that it's not okay, but like I think it's not okay. I think that, like, obviously capitalism is wrong for like a myriad of reasons, but this thing of like someone just like seeing their employers or as their benefactors is it's part of the culture where I grew up in, and it upsets me. I don't like it. And yeah, I think it's yeah, I don't like it. And Justine is very much that. Justine is very much presented as this person who works for the Frankensteins and who sees them as her benefactors, who sees them as like the people who like have given her a way to live, even though they are her employers. Like, they're not her benefactors, they are her employers. So like I don't know how aware of class Mary Shelley was. I think that to some extent she was. One of the things that happens later in the novel is that Justine is framed for the murder of William, and in that moment I think that the awareness towards class is very, very clear. Because to me it's obvious that things would have gone extremely differently if Victor or Elizabeth or Frankenstein Sr. had been convicted with the murder of William. But since it was Justine, just kill her. And I think that that's intentional. I think that that's an actual commentary on class. To be fair, I might be reading way too much into the book, but like, there is a lot to be read into. Like, it's just such a rich and dense text. I just love it so much. Yeah, sickeningly classist. Absolutely, they truly are sickeningly classist. The sickness aesthetic, the day that I was like sitting in bed and everything, is also when we first started shipping Victor and Henry, Clerval and Frankenstein. And yeah, like Victor just expresses his love towards Henry like very, very openly, in a way that is uncommon to see between two men nowadays. In my surroundings, in the West, if you want, like, the West. Sorry. Take down the West. Like, is Brazil the West? Because I grew up in Brazil, okay? Like, does that count as the West? Actually, like, this is exactly why I should have, like, why the word discussion should not be in the title of this video. It should be ramble, but whatever. Like, look at me asking myself if Brazil is the West while talking about Frankenstein. Yeah, that's true. Victor actually is accused of murder later in the story. Like, near the end of the story, Victor is accused of murder, and he is given like a proper place to sleep and like good legal representation. You are absolutely correct, Jojo. I forgot that for a second here. Yeah, absolutely. We actually see the classism, and I do think it's part of the text. So part 5 was the whole part where I had Jesus behind me, and it was the moment when Justine was sentenced and everything. Amazing Elizabeth chapters, like amazing. Like Elizabeth does so much. Like Elizabeth does more for the plot in that one chapter than Victor does for like 6 chapters after the monster's narration. So like amazing Elizabeth moment. I love her. I stan Elizabeth. This is part 6 is when I actually utter the sentence, Elizabeth deserves better, and I talk a lot about classism in the book and the narcissism of Victor Frankenstein. Victor, like, in this moment of the story, like, as Justine is like being sentenced to die, Victor is like going on and on and on about like how Justine may be sentenced to die, but he is the one who is truly miserable, and that no one suffers like he suffers because he created the monster and he knows who killed William, and like he feels guilty about it, and because he feels guilty, that means that he is like the one who suffers the most. Even though he's like talking about this just as a woman is sentenced to death for a murder that he knows who committed. Awful. This is why we started talking so much about his self-centeredness in this part of the analysis, which is part 5. Victor truly likes to procrastinate and look at nature instead of doing what needs to be done. He truly does. And he does that for like 6 or 7 chapters in the end of the story. So Elizabeth in this one chapter like does so much more. Not 6 or 7, I think it's like 4 chapters, but it's too much. I love those chapters. The nature descriptions are amazing. So, talking about nature descriptions, part 6 is when Victor is assailed by like by nature, and he's like looking at the sublime, and with that he finally encounters the monster. Part 6 is where we talked about this. It was chapters 9 and 10. I eat cookies in that video, so like if you have issues with seeing people eating on video, like avoid part 6 because I eat cookies in it, or be aware of it. It was Christmas time. Oh yes, that was the moment where I confessed to I confessed something that I am not the biggest fan of the monster's narration. That I like it. I think it changes the story dramatically. Let's just say that I'm really glad that the monster's narration is only 6 chapters long. Actually, only 5, because one of them is the story of Shafi. Because the monster, like, bless his heart. He's the only good person in the entire story. But his narration is just like so different to everything else. And like the Victor's narration is just so dark and like so gothic, and it feels so much like this horror story, you know, and like there was one time when I actually skipped the monster's narration while reading through the novel. And the story changes completely. It becomes like this dark, like horror tale. It's just like purely a horror tale if you skip skip the monster's narration. And the monster's narration makes the book a lot better. It gives a lot more nuance to like everything. However, it also like basically pulls the book into like this tragedy direction, making like it's just so much. it's like it's 6 chapters that change the entire nature of the book, and I really do like the nature of the book without them. And the experience of reading the monster's narration is like, it's fascinating, but I am glad it's only 6 chapters long. It's a lot of misery, and I do like misery always, but it's a lot. It's a lot. So I'm going to say that. And I have always been a bigger fan of analysis of Victor. Like, that's the thing. That's the thing that I think is controversial. I think that Victor is like, I think that Victor's parts have way more interesting stuff to talk about and analyze than the monster's part. Yeah. And that's just my opinion. Um Also, beware, in part 6, besides eating cookies, there's also pretty bad sound at a couple of points. So beware of that if you're going to watch that. And then also I'm going to say that, actually, you know what? I am just going to say a little thing. There is a lot to say about God and about like God metaphors when it comes to Victor, obviously, because it creates man and stuff. But I am not going to touch on that unless someone wants to talk about it in the chat. I'm not going to go deeper into that. I'm just going to say there's a lot of God stuff, and part 6 is basically where I dumped all of my ideas about God and creation and relation to Victor. Yeah, I actually do agree with this, Jojo. In the comments, Jojo just said, the monsters bring you down misery instead of I want to read more misery. Exactly. To me, that's exactly it. Like, the entire book is miserable, but the monster's narration is just like, stop! So part 7, the monster narration starts. And there's the reading of the monster as an abandoned queer child that we're going to get more into in subsequent parts. Part 8 is when I finally part 8 is when we finally get to the center of the book, with a story about women needing to like about women needing to like learn to liberate themselves. That is like the story within a story within a story is about a woman learning to liberate herself. I don't think that that's an accident. I think that it was very deliberate for Mary Shelley to include that in the core of her novel. And we need to talk about the fact that we get to yet another thing that I think was unintentional in the part of Mary Shelley, which is the way that Shafi is framed. She's a Middle Eastern woman, and her being saved by Felix is framed as a good thing. It is very, very white saviory. It is very, very Middle Eastern. Like, the Middle East doesn't have anything positive to give to women. That's how I think it seemed. I think it's what the book seems to imply. And I don't like it. I think that the book has like this hierarchy of life is certainly better in Central Europe than it is in the Middle East. There's this theme a little bit around this part, that I think is not great. Not great. So there. This happens during part 8 of the reading, which was chapters 12 and 13. Finally, we move to part 9, where we stand the monster. And I finally started talking about... Finally, honestly. I started talking about... colonizers never saved anything. She didn't need saving. Yes. Yeah. 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 Part 9 is when we stand the monster, and is when I started talking about maybe reading the monster not as a queer metaphor, but rather as disability metaphor. And I ran with that. From part 9 onwards, I run with that very much. We started talking a lot about eugenics from this point on. In part 9, I contrasted Frankenstein against David Lynch's Elephant Man, which is a trauma porn movie, and said that where Elephant Man fails heavily in depicting in having a character who is disabled, Frankenstein might have succeeded precisely because of these many chapters diving into the psyche of the monster, which I think makes the story, if we want to read it as a disability metaphor, I think it's probably good. And this is going to be a running theme across part 10, which is when I first say the word eugenics, I think, and it's an awesome metaphor. Good. It's an awesome metaphor. Part 10 is when I talk about eugenics explicitly for the first time, and we also talked about basically part 10 is chapter 17 is when we go back to Victor's narration. We spent multiple chapters, 6 chapters specifically, reading the perspective of the monster, and now we are back to Victor's narration. And the first conversation between Victor and the monster, Jojo right here pointed out that seemed like a bad coming out story, and it's it does feel a lot like it's the monster is bringing his first partner to meet his parents, and Victor is just completely in denial and completely refusing to do anything. And I would like to say that there are 2 moments when Victor does something vaguely kind in the entire story, and only 2. The first one is 6 chapters before, when the monster asks him to hear his tale and Victor accepts. And right now the monster asks for Victor to create a partner for him. The monster wants a bride, and Victor initially, after some pleading, Victor accepts to do it. and it will not be like good in the end, but like here he says sure. Yes, and then chapter 18 is finally the boringest chapter in the story, because Victor has already agreed to create this this female monster, and he's just looking at nature for like an entire chapter. It's just standing in the way of the plot. Like, I put it as Victor just being a stone in the way of the plot. The plot wants to move forward. The plot wants to like have him create this female monster, and Victor is just like, but the trees and the sky and the river and everything, and it's like, Victor, you have a job to do. Like, do not realize that there is a monster following you. And he doesn't. It's frustrating. It's one of my favorite chapters in the entire book, chapter 18. And he's with Clerval, Henry Clerval, in this chapter. And part 10 of the live stream is when I decided that this ship was going to have a very basic name, because I am a very basic shipper, and they are Vanry. This is the ship name. Do you think it would have been better for Victor to have said no instead? Honestly, maybe. What do you think? Because like, maybe if he had said no, if he had just refused, there's a chance that the monster would just have killed him there and then. And like, less misery would have happened subsequently, right? What do you think? Do you think that it would have been better for him to say no? Like, I'm not confident that the monster would have killed Victor there, then and there. I think that it's possible that things would have been very similar. But yeah, there's also the chance that the monster would have been so enraged by the fact that Victor said no, that he would have killed him. And done. End of the story. Yeah, I think him saying no would have saved the others' lives. Yeah, possibly. Yeah. I think so. Honestly, I tend to agree with you. I tend to think that him saying no would have saved the others' lives as well. And with that, we go into part 11, which I believe is the longest live stream that we had. Because chapter 20 is like the most. But first we had chapter 19, which is yet another chapter of Victor standing in the way of the plot. And then chapter 20 is reading the comment. The monster went after those Victor loved because Victor destroyed his possible love. If Victor said no, I think the monster would have killed Victor and been done. Yeah. I think it's very likely. I think it's very, very likely that the monster would have just killed Victor right there and then. And that being said, if Victor had said no, we wouldn't have had chapter 20, which is really the chapter where I think the most, possibly the most interesting thing in the novel takes place, which is when Victor has finished creating the lady monster, which for the matter, he decided to give a womb. Like, I go in length about this, about the fact that Victor's decision to like interpret the monster's demand as a will to reproduce is because Victor has no understanding of women outside of motherhood. That Victor only understands women as their social role and their capacity to bear children. This is how Victor understands women. And I do not think that this is how the monster necessarily understood women. And I think that when the monster requested a partner, he was not saying that he wanted someone that he could have children with. But this is how Victor read it, because that's how he understands women. And after creating this lady monster that he's afraid is going to help the monster populate the world with a race of devils. This is a direct quote from the book. He thinks that they will populate the world with a race of devils. He destroys her before giving her life. It's an abortion metaphor. This is where I talked a lot more about eugenics near the ending of the very, very long live stream, which is part 11. Near the ending of part 11, I actually started talking about eugenics in a very lighthearted way that I don't think is super appropriate, but I went with it. And then I eventually went a bit more serious. But basically what Victor did is that he kept these two disabled people from bearing children. He kept these two people from a different race from continuing their lineage. The eugenics metaphor is, to me, almost explicit. It's there. And it's just so heavy. It's just so heavy in this chapter, just with this one huge act that takes place. And I love chapter 20 because it's huge. It's we see Victor saying that the woman would be even more wicked than the man, and this harkens back to Paradise Lost, which had been mentioned during a previous chapter. The monster reads Paradise Lost in chapter 15 or 16. The monster reads Paradise Lost, and Victor thinking that the woman would be even more wicked harkens back to that, to how women are responsible for all the ills of the world, according to a lot of Christian tradition. And yeah, so bad. And not only that, but also the abortion metaphor. There's an abortion metaphor there, written by a woman who lost children to death. It's just so rich. I love this moment so much, this chapter. And Victor is a classic case of the patriarchy in how he has no clue about women. He really doesn't. Zero. Zero clue about women for sure. And finally, not finally yet, but then we move on to part 12. where I don't say a lot of new things. I keep on saying that everything that Elizabeth does is good, and yeah, there isn't much that I say that is new in part 12. Then we move to part 13, which is the ending of Victor's narration, and I talk about how gender is a huge theme in the entire novel, and how Frankenstein Sr. dies of misery, which I consider to be kind of unexpected. There's like this grand romantic tradition of women dying of misery because like they cannot handle like all of the sadness. And here's Mary Shelley in the 19th century like subverting that trope that was probably not even that prevalent back then, by having Frankenstein Sr., the father, dying of misery because of the death of Elizabeth and everything. And I talk about that a little bit. And then finally, we come to part 14 that we just finished now. And I want to say about part 14 that one of the things that I really, really like is that this is when we go back to Walton and what he is writing to his sister. And I really like how Walton talks about if Victor is this great, I don't remember the exact word that he uses, in his misery, I cannot imagine how he would be in his prime. And the idea that Victor has like all of this charisma and that Victor has like the seductive quality to him adds like a new layer to the story to me, where like part of the reason why people aren't seeing him for the evil that he is because he knows how to speak well, because he's well educated, because he's white, because he's rich. And this small moment where Walton says that Victor is so great in his misery he can't even imagine how he would be in his prime, to me indicates that a little bit. Shelley was way ahead of her time in her approach to tropes and social commentary. Absolutely, this was a running theme during Vanessa Júpiter Reads Frankenstein as well. Me reading it and being like, it's just bizarre that this is like one of the early novels. Like, novels hadn't existed for very long when Mary Shelley wrote this, and for her to have like just, done this, it's like, what a trailblazer. Like, honestly, like, is that what trailblazer means? I'm going to research it because but yeah, do you have comments about the final chapter, Jojo, the final reading that we just had, that you didn't have time to do because the reading went so fast in the end? Yes, the final reading almost has no commentary, partly because like it ends on the monster's narration in a way that is just like shockingly good. It's like the monster has like this amazing monologue towards Walton that just like, what can you say after that? It's like, done. I'm sorry, like I'm tuning out now. But do you have comments, Jojo? And about this and about anything else, like, I have all night. I think it's really appropriate that we end with the monster, for sure. For sure. Like, as I said, I think, like, also Victor is the worst. I think that, like, as I said, I think that the monster just changes the story completely. Like, without the voice of the monster, the Frankenstein wouldn't be what it is. It's just so huge how much it affects the story. Like, so huge. So yeah, I think that it makes perfect sense to finish with him, because he is the face of the book. Like, and I think that's like, okay, this is part of the reason why I think the pedantism of, like, being so dead set on being like, you can never call the monster Frankenstein, because Frankenstein is the person who created the monster. Like, this is a type of pedantism that I just really don't appreciate on any level. And this is part of the reason, is because, like, the monster is the face of the story. Like, the face of the story isn't Victor. Like, Victor is the title, like, Frankenstein is the title of the story, but, like, what we all remember is the monster. What do you mean by real life in its closure? Closure. Even though we don't know what happened to the monster, it's the best way to end the book. The villain is dead, and it's like real life in its closure. If you read the monster as Victor's child, then why wouldn't they share a last name? Mic drop, Jojo. Mic drop. Thank you. No, but for real though, like the thing is that I don't even ever, like, it's not like I'm trying to protect myself here. I don't make that mistake. Like, I don't call the mistake. Just as Jojo presented, like, irrefutable proof that it's okay to call the monster Frankenstein. Irrefutable proof. Like, the thing is that even though I don't do that, even though I generally don't call the monster Frankenstein, I still think it's, like, so silly to be so hung up on this. So yeah. In real life, things end and we go on. We don't need to keep following the monster. That's what I mean by closure. Yeah, for sure. Like, I think that the book ends in the perfect place, for sure. And I do think that we get all the closure that we need, and we really, really don't need to see the monster coming to his own demise, which is what obviously we assume happens, but we obviously also can't be sure. It wouldn't add anything to see him die, because the story is over. Yeah, I can see that. Is that what you mean? Did I rephrase what you said accurately? Oh my god, I'm going to... Honestly, like, If you read the monster as Victor's child, then why wouldn't they share a last name? I feel like I am going to end up using this sentence on like Twitter threads so many times. Jojo, this is so good. Okay, exactly. So I rephrased what you said correctly. The Do you have any more comments? I think that I don't. I think that this was enough of a ramble for Frankenstein. The Frankenstein full novel discussion. Which I'm going to finish by saying that yes, I started the live stream, the 14th reading live stream, the final reading part of Frankenstein, by saying that I am starting, like, do you want to say anything else? Like, before I go into like my feelings, do you want to say anything else? This has been awesome. Thank you for this journey. Yeah, this is basically what I want to talk about, like the journey of Vanessa Júpiter Reads Frankenstein. Like, it's been so much. It was 14 sessions, as I said, spread across 4 months. Like the vast majority of Sundays, I was here in drag reading, and like after this time, it's really like, especially given the circumstances of the world right now, where time has just become like this bizarre thing where 4 months ago seems like so far away, but also like so close, and nothing makes much sense. The beginning honestly feels nostalgic already. It feels like it was a completely different life. It feels like I was a completely different person. Like, and like, absolutely to sound dramatic, I almost said like not sound dramatic or anything, but absolutely to sound dramatic, like I had just finished the production of the movie, and I I just decided to do Vanessa Júpiter Reads Frankenstein because it's always been one of my favorite novels, and it's been like a lot. Like, it's I'm very much looking forward to a break. I am going to take a break from Vanessa Júpiter Reads at the very least until May, so there will be no Vanessa Júpiter Reads in either March or April, because I need this break for real. But that being said, the process of doing it was really good. It's I feel like I improved my skills as a reader in some ways. Like yeah. I got to like reread Frankenstein, which I had been meaning to do for a while, and like just with people and analyze it so much. It's been a lot. It's been very, very special, and like that's the thing. Like I look at it and it feels like a project that meant something, and to me personally, and I'm glad to have done it. I really am. And that's why I'm feeling like very, very emotional today. I'm feeling very nostalgic about the beginning. I'm feeling like glad that it's over, but I was also like dragging my feet to get to the live stream today. I was I'm not sure if there was ever another time that I got that close to canceling just because I was not in the mood as today, because today I was just like, I just don't want to do it. There's also the fact that like my life is just very there are like things that are happening psychologically in my life at the moment that are just a lot. And and I to have like the ending of a project at a time when my emotions are already like very, very high in other directions. It just makes the end all the more special, I guess. And yeah, I'm glad that I did it, and I'm glad that I got to come to an end. As I said, it does really feel like it means something. That like it meant something. And I'm also glad that I decided to do the final ramble, to format it like this, to because after so long to have been like I feel like I would have felt like very me presenting to YouTube like my true version, like the true version of myself, where I in case you're watching this and you're not aware, I cry a lot. It's just a matter of time for me to cry. My lives. I'm glad that it's happened. I mean, it was a matter of time. My very first live reading, I cried as well. But like, it took a while for me to cry again. And yeah, I think I said everything that I wanted to say. Did I lose my camera? Like I know that my camera. Yes. Okay. I assume that you're still hearing me, which is good. But ah. Okay, you're still hearing me. And I I'm going to try to add you're still hearing me, right? Like I'm pretty sure that the reason why I disappeared is because I oh god. This is great. I'm pretty sure that the reason why I disappeared is because my camera has run out of battery. It was just a matter of time. I knew that it was likely to happen. So yeah, so now enjoy this image of me looking a little bit down, and oh wait. Ah, there you go. Okay, so yeah, I think that I said everything that I wanted to say beforehand anyway. So Yes, Jojo, thank you for being here. Thank you for your message as well. And I appreciate that you did the closing statement, because I don't want to today. I already did it one time for the live reading. So actually I don't know how to close. Oh yes, I do know how to close. This is like, I'm going to close like I close my other videos, which is by just saying love Vanessa Júpiter. So but before I do that, I am going to do the traditional countdown of 20 to make sure that I have given you time to say whatever you want to say before I leave. Thank you for. Oh my god. Am I just going to like. Are we just going to like keep on crying the whole time? Okay. Thank you so much for being here. Vanessa Júpiter Reads is going to go on hiatus until at the very least May, possibly a little bit longer. And I will keep YouTube and all of my social media updated as to when we return. Thank you for being here. Love, Vanessa Júpiter.